Hi everyone, it's Darlene. Welcome back for another card video. Today's card has no line Copic coloring. I'm using this solid flower stamp from the Flower Patch set by Stampin' Up. I'm also using the Christmas Blessings sentiment die, but I'm just using the blessings part of it. And I'm going to put it on my piece of Neenah Solar White cardstock and mark where I want my sentiment to be. And then I'm going to start stamping my flowers. You could do this with any large flower stamp. It doesn't even have to be solid. You could just have an outline. But I'm using antique linen ink because it just gives me a light image so that I just know how to follow the outline of it. So I'm going to stamp 3 of these, and I'm going to balance it with the one on the right at the top. And they're all going to be hanging off the paper. I'm also going to mark the centers just so it's easier for me to color. The first flower I colored on camera, I just felt like I didn't do a very good job of simplifying it, so I thought I'd just skip that part and go straight to the second one. So I'm going to start with a dark red R29. This is an original Copic marker. It's not a sketch marker. I love the sketch markers a lot more than this one, but I just happen to have this one in an original because that's what my husband bought me for Christmas one time because he just didn't know. Anyway, so I'm just going to draw a circle around that pencil dot I put in there, and I'm going to flick upwards, and the flicking doesn't look as good with this pen, but with the sketch marker it looked really nice. But you flick outward toward the middle of the flower. The next step is to take the next color, which is R24, it's just a little bit lighter red. And I'm fast forwarding this part because you can't really see because my thumb's in the way, so I'm going to slow it down when my thumb gets out of the way. And you can see I'm starting about in the middle of the R29 and I'm flicking upwards, and I'm just going up a little bit more than I did before. So I'm going towards the tip here. I just have one more color left to finish it off, so I'm going to be about 2/3 of the way up. I'm just adding a little bit more over here because it wasn't consistent across the flower. Also with the R24, I'm going to go to the tips of each petal and I'm going to color just a little bit. So sometimes I'm starting in the middle, going to the left, sometimes going to the right, sometimes just across the top. I'm not trying to be the same on each one. It really doesn't matter. And each of my flowers are a little bit different, and some of the lines are going to be longer, some a little shorter. I just want to give the idea that the petals are actually rolling downward. And so when you create a shadow on the tip, it looks like your petals are curling out. So I'm just going to finish this on all these flowers and make sure that I go all the way to the edge of the antique linen. And then I'm ready to move on to my next color, which is R22. And really the whole purpose of the next step is to just color all of my antique linen. This is truly just solid coloring. I am blending into that R24 that I flicked upward from the center, but I'm not worried about flicking this R22. I really just want to make sure everything gets covered. Now I'm going to start moving into the details. So I'm going to take the R29, and when you use Copic on top of Copic, like the same color, you're just going to get a darker version of the color. So I'm using that same R29 I flicked from the beginning, and I'm just going to go over my colors again just to darken up the center just a little bit more. Notice that I'm okay with having lines of marker. It's sort of like the texture of the flower, and that's the look I'm going for, not something that's completely blended. Now that I've darkened it a little bit, I'm actually going to lighten it a little bit. So I have my Stampin' Up! Chalk marker, and I'm going to start from the outside in, and I'm going to flick and also curve a little bit based on the shape of the petal from the outside toward the inside. And you can see I'm stopping about halfway. So some of my lines are long, some of them are short, just trying to make it look a little more realistic by having it varied. So I'm just going to go all the way around, starting at the top underneath that R24 that I put on the tip, and then flick upward toward the center. And then I'm going to do the same exact thing going from inside to outside. I'm not going to do as many flicks from the inside to the outside, but I do want to make sure I have some white down here, because what I'm actually going to do is color over this to provide even more shades of red. I'm going to introduce one more red. This is R39. It's a very, very dark red. And I'm going to do some flicks from the inside to the outside. And what's going to happen is where there's not white, I'm going to get a very, very dark R39. And where there is white, I'm going to get a lightened R39. So actually I'm adding even 2 shades here because I have that white laid down underneath. So I'm going to flick upward. You can see I'm not really filling it in. I'm just kind of using this sparingly. So now I'm going to finish off the blending of the flower by bringing back my darkest, and my lightest that I started with. So you can see I'm taking my R29, which was the original dark, and I'm flicking kind of between the R39 that I just laid down just to blend all that together, because that R39 is really dark. So I'm going from inside to outside, and I'm also covering more of that white that's kind of in the middle of the petal. And now I'm going to grab my R22 and I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to go from the outside to the inside, because I do want to cover the white that was on the outside of the petal, since I haven't done anything with that yet. So when I cover the white, I'm going to get kind of a light R22 and a dark R22, because I'm doing R22 on R22. So I hope that makes sense. So it's just about providing a variety of different shades of red, and by using the white, you're able to create even more than what you have. I have one more flower to color, so I left the coloring in here. I'm just speeding through it so you can see that I'm following the same steps, just in fast motion. So it's going to take me about a minute or so, and then I will be back. Notice I did all of my flower coloring before doing the centers, just because I wanted to make sure that my reds were completely dry before I started moving to the yellow, so that they wouldn't blend together. I'm going to use colors from 3 different color families to color these middles. I'm going to start with the YR12, and I'm going to color it on the left hand side and a little bit around the edge. Then I'll take my Y15, which is really a bright yellow, and I'm going to finish that out all the way to the edge. You can see how I'm going all the way to the red, so I wanted to make sure that it's dry. And then I'm going to take my E13 and provide a little bit of a brownish shadow on the left hand side. And it really does add a lot of dimension to add this E in there. And then I'm going to take my 0.3 Copic liner and just add some black dots, just randomly. And if you have a pencil mark still on there from the beginning, you can cover that as well. And then finally, I just added a little bit of my chalk marker. I just dotted a few dots here and there, kind of in the upper right quadrant. And that adds a little bit of a reflection and makes it seem more dimensional. I'm going to turn the music up for maybe like 30 seconds while I finish these up. One more detail with these flowers, I'm going to give them a shadow against my white background. So I grabbed my C1, which is a very, very light gray, and I'm going to outline around the petals, not all around the petals. You can see I'm doing them all around the left side. Once I get toward the right, then I'm just doing the left side. So you just kind of have to imagine the light coming from the right hand side and where you might see a shadow. Once I get the C1 down, then I'll grab my 0 colorless blender, and I'm just going to go along the edge of that C1 just to blend it more toward the flower and soften it up just a little bit. So I'm going to do that on all sides here, and that'll complete this flower. And I'm going to go ahead and do this on all of the other flowers, and I'll fast forward really quickly while I do that. With that done, I'm ready to complete the rest of the card. I die cut the blessing sentiment out of some black paper, and I have my Express glue marker. It's a brand new adhesive that I just got, and I'm trying to replace my two-way glue pen, and I thought this might be a good option, and I actually really do like it a lot. The difference between this and the two-way glue pen is that this, I think the liquid comes out a little bit faster. That may also be because it's brand new. But the biggest difference is that it has a round tip, it doesn't have a chisel tip, which I kind of like the chisel tip a little bit better. I still am going to get the Zig marker to see how that works. But in the meantime, I'm pretty happy with this glue pen. So I'm just going to add some dots all around this sentiment, and then I'm using my tweezers to place it down on my card. Whenever I have a dot over an I in a die cut, I just use a marker because it's so much easier than trying to find that little piece. I cut this panel 1/8 of an inch on two sides so that I would have a 1/16 of an inch border, and then I put some ATG tape runner on the back and adhered it to a Hero Arts black note card. And that is the card for today. So something else you can do with those solid stamps or big flowers. I hope you enjoyed that, and I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.